Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Today's guest in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is Laura West. Laura is the podcast host of A Guided Life. She's also written a book called Guided, and she's an intuitive medium, and she also connects very strongly to spirit guides and angels. So, Laura and I are going to be talking about all things higher realm, etherical, as well as highlight the significance of spirit guides, how we could connect to them, and their own significance in her life as well as yours. So, without further ado, we bring on Laura West on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Laura West, it's such a big honor to have you here as my guest on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I was really honored to be on your podcast, the Guided Life podcast. And I know our podcasts are a part of the mindbodyspirit.fm network. And I strongly encourage, viewers to check out Laura. Will really highlight a lot of her socials and podcast information throughout the course of our conversation. But for viewers, who aren't familiar with the Guided Life podcast or the work and focus of Laura West, could you take us through a little bit of your focus and also how you got into getting involved in spiritually, I would say conscious conversations and, tuned in kind of topics at hand?
Yeah, absolutely. My focus really with the show and just what I do in life is just to help remind people how supported, guided, and loved they are from the other side. So, whatever entities we're talking about, spirit guides, angels, I call it soul teams to sort of encompass all of it.
Mhm.
So I just love to share about how the other side is there, how they communicate with us, whether it's through signs or synchronicities, our intuition, sharing my mediumship journey and my story related to that, but also trying to understand things in a more I guess logical way. I am a registered nurse, so I do work in healthcare. So I have a very scientific, logical side of my brain, but then I also have the spiritual side of myself, and it's sort of melding the two together to satisfy both sides of my brain. The brain that just knows there's something there, and the other side that's, well, how is there something there? So that's where I've been on this journey. And in retrospect, I can see how it really started in my, um, younger years,
Mhm.
especially how I was set up to become a medium, really, it's just hindsight is 2020. I had a lot of dream visitations from spiritual entities, past loved ones for years, sporadically, and then in 2020, I started to experience and explore mediumship more. And that was because in 2019, I started meditating for the first time. And so that helped to really spearhead my spiritual journey as far as discovering my intuition and delving into mediumship and energy healing, and then writing a book about it, and then starting a podcast about it, and just sharing what it is that I'm learning. Really, I'm going through this journey with my listeners and with my readers and whoever else is here along for the ride with me, because a lot of what I experienced in my younger years, having what I call two spiritual awakenings, the first one being learning about spirituality for the first time 20 plus years ago, meeting my spirit guide, and then back in 2019 starting to meditate, and then just my intuition exploding and opening up and having all of these things line up and happen. So that's really led me to where I am today, where I now am hosting my own podcast and getting to speak at events live and virtually, and contributing to journals, both nationally and internationally, and
Mhm.
teaching as well, on different scales. So very excited to be on this ride with people like you and with my soul team members, like my guides and everybody too.
Wow. Fascinating. There's certainly an undeniable evolution, it seems, in your own life in the last 2 decades. And, your work is continually ascending, evolving, and it's never just, kind of there. You're always opening yourself up for different things. Um, to take, because I know this is a very big topic of interest with a lot of my viewers and, the work that we're a part of. You mentioned you had an encounter with your spirit guide. How did this come about? And, like, what was that like for you? Was this, take us through because we love stories here on the channel.
Yes, I love stories too, and I love to be able to share my stories, so in case somebody else can resonate with
Mhm.
it, or if they wanna try it, or if they just find it interesting. So, back in my teenage years, I picked up Sylvia Brown books for the first time, and back then, we didn't I think Amazon was starting to be a book thing. Maybe it wasn't. It could have even been before that, but I'd have to go to the bookstore to find these books, and Sylvia Brown, she was a psychic medium who, was wrote tons of books. She was a guest on the Montel Williams show
Mhm.
a lot, and she had this really raspy voice, but her work captivated me. And it was through her books that I learned about spirit guides for the first time. A little background, I grew up in a Christian and Jewish household. So religion was in my life, but I was so fortunate in that my parents, um, they allowed me to explore. They're very much open to all religions and all possibilities. For instance, even though my Korean mother was raised Christian and we would go to Korean church and things like that, she would still, have us read like Buddhist teachings and things that were really, just open-minded concepts. And whenever I'd have experiences, I could share them with her and my dad. And then my dad, who is this, he was born in the Bronx in New York, and he grew up in a Jewish household, and we would go to synagogue as well. But he loved watching, Star Trek and the X Files, and he would say things to me like, "I feel like I was born too soon because the technology hasn't caught up to where he knows it could be." So just really
Wow.
interesting ideas like that. So very lucky to have that upbringing
Mhm.
because it allowed me to explore what intuitively felt right to me. So I went to both synagogue and church, and I'm trying to, find what sits well. And so when I picked up the spirituality books that Sylvia Brown wrote, I was like, "This feels good, like, this feels right." And so I couldn't get enough. So to me, this is spiritual awakening number 1. And in one of her books, she started talking about spirit guides and how you can meet your own. And this was the first time I had learned about spirit guides, and I really was intrigued by the idea. And I loved the idea of having more support than just God on the other side. I mean, God's amazing. But to have more sort of, I guess, personal support, I don't know, there's just something about that that really intrigued me and I liked. And in one of her books, she mentioned you can ask them to visit or meet you in your dreams. And I liked that because I am a scaredy cat and I didn't want them just jumping out at me or doing something weird. So the whole idea of delving into spirit world was very new. And, I was a little bit scared. So visiting in my dreams was perfect. And so I did that. I just put it out there for my spirit guide to visit me in my dreams. And about 2 weeks later, I had a dream of this young man, and I just, thank goodness, and somehow subconsciously knew to ask him, "Are you my spirit guide?" And he said, "Yes." And then the next and only other question I asked him, well, was what was his name? And he told me it was Jason. And then that's how I met my spirit guide, Jason. And I consider him my quote unquote main guide who's there with me through it all from the very beginning when my soul sparked. So that's how it came to be, and that's how I tell other people, as one of the methods to try if they're ever curious to meet their own spirit guides.
Mhm. Wow. So Jason, that's a very, it's one of my best friend's name
Oh,
and a modern name, and I think sometimes people forget, sometimes spirit guides could have very exotic names, but, sometimes they could be quite simplistic, like Sylvia had Francine, as
yeah.
one of her guides, yeah, it's funny you mentioned the raspy voice, "It's your guide, honey," so I loved watching her, and her books were wonderful, and I talk to people all the time, just a couple days ago, someone came up to me and just told me, how much Sylvia Browne's books, influenced her, and she doesn't read anything else but Sylvia Browne, and it's just really, that's wonderful to hear. Now, now for you, like, when do you know, "Okay, I don't wanna just be a participant or have this privately. This is something that I really wanna get out. I really wanna share." How do you know it's like, "Alright, I don't wanna be just a fan in the stands of spirit guides, but I wanna be on the field, like a Sylvia Browne and just kind of, promoting the good work of the spirit guides?"
Just such a good question, and I'll tell you what, it's not for everyone, and maybe not even for the faint of heart, because it's really hard to put yourself out there, right? It takes courage, it really
Mm,
does. So, back again in my teenage years, I, was during this time, I was attending Korean church. So, my dad is retired Air Force, so we moved about every 3, 4 years.
mhm,
And so it seemed like every time we moved to a new place, we would go to synagogue, move to a new place, go to Korean church. It was kind of like it alternated like that.
mhm,
So during this time, we were attending Korean church. And I'm still in that deciding, do I feel more Christian? Do I feel more Jewish? And maybe for some people, they're like, "Oh, they shouldn't have brought you up into religions. It probably confused you." But whether it was one or both or multiple religions, I still would have had the same, "Where do I feel like this fits in for me?" No matter what. And so it was during this time when I was a teenager and I was still deciding how did Christianity fit into my life that I had a dream visitation from Jesus, and he asked me in that dream to spread his word. And the reason why that's significant was because during that time, I was still deciding if I even wanted to call myself Christian. Like, I didn't know where I stood. And so I felt like, gosh, that's kind of weird timing to be asking me this. So I told him that I would try, and that was enough for him because the dream ended. And it took me a long time to understand what he meant in that dream. And that dream
mhm,
stuck with me. I mean, even now, we're talking 20 plus years that I still very vividly remember this visitation. And so I come to realize that what he wanted me to do was spread the word of love. And because
mm,
that's what he stood for. So once I realized that that's what it was, and it wasn't to sit here and evangelize and preach and all that stuff that I'm not comfortable with, I was like, "Oh, that I can do," because it's as simple as just being kind to somebody else. Like, it's so simple. So I was like, "Yes, this I can do." And I started to work more with my spirit guides and meeting more spirit guides through guided meditations, through dreams, and realizing how they're here and learning how they're here to help me with this journey, and using my intuition to know that, okay, I've learned a lot for myself. It's time to share this with others because it felt right to finally write a book. It felt right to finally do a podcast. So intuitively, I'm getting these messages that, okay, it's time for the next step. And
mhm,
so that's how I knew. Well, one, that's how I was motivated on this journey, was through that dream visitation. That's how I knew that this was what I was meant to do in some capacity. And with the power of social media and podcasts and things, I have these beautiful avenues to be able to do that once I realized that I had the ability to connect on a mediumship level to these different entities, past loved ones, etc. So that's where that's where it took me is just my intuition saying, okay, it's time to do this next step. And I do it. It feels great and it works well and it works
Mhm.
almost effortlessly. So that's how I knew to what it felt like to listen to it and then to follow through with it.
Mhm. You saw that it worked for you in your own life, and you just were very enthusiastic, um,
Yes.
to give that over, in a multitude of modalities, to the people that you know, cross path with. So many different angles to take, within your work. I'm curious though, and I get this question asked commonly, I'm sure as do you. How did you personally get over, because I know you mentioned there's a left brain part of the work that you do, obviously working in the medical field, and then you have this creative intuitive side. How did you know that, "Hey, this isn't just a brain thing. I'm not analyzing this. This is something else." And also with that understanding, like, how could people decipher? Because I think that is a big blockage that people have where it's like, "Geez, this is wishful thinking. I'm thinking this, it's not from anywhere else. And if I act on this, my life is gonna be screwed." So how did you be able to decipher the 2?
Such a good question. And a lot of it is sort of circumstantial evidence,
Mhm,
and a lot of it is putting yourself out there. So for me, one of the scariest leaps that I took was taking my mediumship and practicing with other people.
mm,
And when you start to get that validation of things that there was no way I could have known, and it's stuff where I mean, it's random stuff. It's not like, yeah, I do get a lot, "Oh, grandma's showing me that she's baking." Well, lots of people bake, but it's the smaller things that people connect with or things that you just wouldn't know, about somebody's passing and things. So, the validation and the practicing and putting yourself out there, that really helped me in my journey of, "Okay, I'm starting to really believe that this is me connecting, that there really
mhm,
is something out there that I'm connecting to," until eventually it becomes a knowing. Now I know that there's something that I am
mhm,
connecting to. But it took practice and it's still a practice. So it's something that I'm still working on and constantly being sort of surprised with spirit. So for me, having the validation and the feedback from somebody, I think that helps to satisfy the part of my brain that is looking
mhm,
for that evidence and looking for the validation that, okay, I'm not just making this up.
mhm,
This really is something that's coming through and not from me. So that's one way to really start to learn to trust that and not
mhm,
say, okay, it's not just me. Following through on those intuitive hits, again, however that intuition comes to you. It could be, just a knowing. It could be like you feel it in your gut or you know it in your heart. Whatever the case may be.
mhm,
But it's the follow through, and so to see the results of following
mhm,
through with that intuition, whether you're in a reading and you intuitively get a hit from spirit and you put it out there and you're like, I don't know if this is going to make sense to you, but this is what they're showing me. And they say, yes, that makes sense. Then that's, you start to learn to feel that. You start to learn to trust
mhm,
that. And then it starts to come through. And I always like to tell people too that, when you see something, like say for instance, for your grandma, you connect her with butterflies or cardinals
mhm,
or something like that, and you see a butterfly or a cardinal. I have to say both. I don't know why, but I have to say both.
mhm,
Actually, I do know why. It's for spirits intuitively making me say both. So say you see a butterfly or a cardinal, and right away you think grandma, and you think of your grandma and like, oh, maybe that's a sign from grandma. Then that's what you go with, because the second thought
mhm,
of, oh no, it's probably just coincidence, that becomes us, and it's no longer from spirit and we start to doubt it. So I always tell people, what is your initial thought with something? Like if you see something that reminds you of your past loved one, go with that. That is them sending that sign to you. They're there with you at that moment because once we start to say, "Oh, no, there's butterflies here all the time," or
Mhm.
something like that, then that becomes us getting in the way, and that's our thinking now and not from spirit. So, there's many different ways to
Mhm.
start to feel more confident in what one receives, but it does require some putting ourselves out there a little bit and having
Mhm.
a little bit of faith to start.
Yeah. I can't curse on the podcast, but what's the craziest you know what that you were asked and, like, that actually, like, you were glad that you listened to it? Like, so I hear from colleagues all the time where it feels like the guides, like to stretch us a little bit and get us to do things that are quite vulnerable and uncomfortable, and I'm wondering for you, like, when you look back in your life, like, what's the craziest thing that you were shown or told and then acted upon, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is crazy, thank God I listened to it, but no
Yeah.
way that this, there's no way this could happen if this is coming from my voice." Like, they knew that this was gonna be okay.
Yeah. So the first story that comes to mind actually has to do with an entity that wasn't a past loved one. I was doing a reading for somebody and I just had to first share what was coming. And it was all about astrology, which was really interesting. I was connecting with this entity who had to do with astrology and giving her, all this information about her astrological practice and giving her the name of this entity and then also saying, "Oh, this is the goddess of astrology. Didn't even know she existed, but she's here." And when I was done with the whole spiel that I was being given by this goddess of astrology, I asked her if she had any other questions or did this resonate with her, and she said, all of my questions had to do with my astrology practice. So I was like, "Oh, that's awesome, like, that's perfect, like, I
Yeah.
connected." And when I got the name of this entity and I shared it with her, she said, "Right when you told me her name, I was just thinking I was gonna ask you what her name was." And also to then know that I was connecting with this astrology, the goddess of astrology, that to me was also mind-blowing. I have connected with the goddess of rainbows. I know this sounds very cheesy, but
Mm,
for the purpose of the reason I connected with her was actually I felt very beautiful. I
mm,
was doing an energy healing for somebody who was trying to get pregnant and had some miscarriages, and during the healing, this female entity or energy came in, and I was like, "Who are you?" And she told me she's the goddess of rainbows, and I was like, "Gosh, that sounds so cheesy." But then I realized that what she meant by that is, if we've heard the term, I'm sure you have, Jacob, rainbow babies, right?
mm,
Babies that were born after like a miscarriage or, some sort of a death of a fetus. So, um, she's that goddess of rainbows, and she delivered this beautiful message to my client that she can expect to be pregnant in the following in a specific month. And, I shared this with the client, and she was able to confirm when that month came around that she did indeed have a positive pregnancy test and had that baby.
mhm,
So to I think that's what's been surprising is meeting entities that I didn't know existed, whether they present themselves like that for me to understand, whether they already existed, but maybe they're known by a different name, but for me, it's anyway, we can go into the weeds with this, but
mhm,
those were really exciting readings for me. The goddess of astrology one was really exciting to learn that she existed because because of all the validation I got for the whole reading,
mm,
I felt very confident that when she told me she was the goddess of astrology, that that's who she was. So, anyway,
mm.
there seem to be goddesses and gods for all sorts of things, that I didn't even realize existed. So those really stand out to me.
Wow. the intelligence over there is far greater than
Yes.
ours, and they see things in much different ways. But certainly they're tuned into our thoughts and our feelings, and it's just kind of scary. It's like just today I was doing like a soul regression for a client, not expecting anything to come from me. It was really about her. But I was just thinking about, obviously being Jewish and my ancestral homeland of Israel, and that was coming she was like, "Your gu like, a guide is coming through and he's mentioning Israel with you," and I'm like, "Yeah, I was just thinking that 2 seconds ago." It's just, like, amazing how tuned in they
Yes.
are, to us, so really cool that you, noticed this and, recognized, obviously, the Jewish parallels that we have. We could talk all day
Yeah.
about also the Korean, connection that I have as well, too, so I feel like I'm
Oh,
talking to yeah. Oh, yes, yes, absolutely. Bagasamida. Yeah, but I have a very strong and we'll get this back to you, but I have a very strong connection to the Korean culture. I worked, in this kinda yoga mindfulness program called, Dan Yoga Danhak, which is a very big part of my own practice. There's some pushback with some of the practices there, but I was immersed in that for years, and the transformation was insane, and I did work with a lot of kids from Seoul when I was living in Sedona for a period of time, and so, for me, it's just,
wow.
like a big part of my connection, is definitely Eastern, and, I feel a strong connection to Korea as well. The founder of the practice, I think it was on Mount Kori in South Korea, had some type of awakening, and then he opened up this yoga practice that was really pivotal on my path, but, definitely we have a lot of cultural
Yeah, we
symmetry,
do.
there for sure. Yeah, the big principle was Chanwa, and,
Mm,
Chanjigyun, universal energy was a big
wow.
part of
I
it, but,
had no idea.
the biggest thing that I took away from that practice was the water up, fire down, where we really wanted to bring that water energy up and the fire a lot down. But, yeah, there was, certainly a lot that we could, reference. But back
Yeah.
to Laura, um, so obviously, you connect to your guide, Jason. Is that, like, for you, like a life in Laura West, is that like Jason bombarding you all the time? Or spirits, like, coming at you? Or is that something that you have to increase your frequency in order to connect? Like, how far do they meet you, or do you have to, like, up your vibe to, connect to Jason or or loved ones on the other side?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, um, I will I will get, uh, signs that Jason is here with me, or if I'm out on a walk, I'll see my maternal grandmother's sign or, things like that. So I do get signs and I recognize them. I get physical sensations from Jason. He gives me a slight pressure on my forehead. So whenever I get that sensation, I stop to think, okay, what was I thinking about? What is he giving me confirmation on or something like that? If I'm doing a reading for somebody, I definitely like to what I call sit in the power, what's called sit in the power, I should say,
Mhm,
and raise my vibration, just get into that headspace. And when I do that, I can, see the other person, see who's there for them, who's going to be at the reading, as well. That one's pretty fun, because I had just recently the last reading I did, I was doing that for the client, and this was new for me. I just saw she had like legions of angels with her, and normally I'll
mm,
just see like spirit guides or I'll see loved ones or goddesses or whatever, but for her, I mean, the space surrounding her was just angels upon angels, like
mhm,
as far as the eye could see. And so I had to tell her, I was like, I mean, you've got like legions of angels with you. And she collected angel figurines. So it
wow,
really, yeah, it really resonated with her. So, being able to see more when I do sit in that power, raise my vibration, that happens naturally too if I'm set up to do a reading for somebody.
mhm,
Say I'm gonna do a reading for you tomorrow, Jacob, and the day before I'll start to think about, "Oh, I wonder who would come through for Jacob," and then right away, I start to see. So maybe just that thought too just raises my vibration as well, because it could come quick. Like, right then, your grandfather, woo, I don't know if you have a
Well,
grandfather passed, it comes in strong.
um,
So
we certainly do. We look exactly alike, which like
oh,
the physical image of myself at his age is I in fact, we had
I'm telling
there there was a wedding photo of him, and it was a black and white, and my niece and nephews who are infants looked at it and says, "Why is Uncle Jake in black and white picture?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they literally thought it
time
was me."
traveler.
Yeah, so funny, but funny that you mentioned, that, no coincidence. Do we all have, spirit guides? 'Cause I've heard some spiritual teachers will say, "Okay, if you're an earth-based soul, then you'll have a guardian
Mm,
angel or a spirit guide, but if you're an IP, interplanetary, or an angelic realm soul, your guide will be your higher self." It's not necessarily that you have a spirit guide. So, have you found that each person before they come into this world has a guide, or some people, their guide may be their higher selves?
yeah, so I've had lots of guests on my show, and there's been different
Mhm,
ideas and perspectives and thoughts when it comes to
mhm,
who who are we really connecting to when we call them our spirit guides. So there are people who say higher self. Um, if you think about just the word spirit guide, it's an entity to guide your spirit. So whether it's your higher self, whether it's a separate entity from you, right now what intuitively resonates with me
mhm,
is a separate entity from me that
mhm,
also has lived their lives as well, so they can empathize, with us when we're going through our human stuff and they're on the wonderful other
mhm,
side. So I always tell people that, one, spirit is not black and white.
mhm,
And so if for them it intuitively resonates that they're they're not so much being helped by a guide versus their higher self, then that's what it is.
mhm,
Because I'm not here to say, nope, that's not right. I mean, people will even say, and Sylvia Brown has said it too, that spirit guides can't be a past loved one who's lived with you in this life, because then that means that while they've lived with you, that spirit guide spot's vacant on the other side, but they can still help guide you. So
mhm,
it really, I think if people feel that, "Oh, my grandmother who's passed, like, she is one of my guides. She is like a guardian angel." Those are just words,
mhm,
that we describe whatever help we're getting on the other side, whether it's our higher self, whether it's a past loved one who did live in our life at some point, whether it is a separate entity, a mystical being, an ET or whatever. There's no black and white, and I'm not here to take anything away from anybody when they intuitively feel it, because I wouldn't want anyone to take that away from me,
mhm,
because it feels right, especially when, me and I've got a lot of other colleagues who we teach about intuition and how important it is, because it really is, in my opinion, the foundation of connecting with the other side, regardless of what entity we're talking about,
mhm,
whether it's ascended masters, higher self, spirit guides, whatever. So who am I to sit here and then teach people about intuition and then just say, "Nope, you're wrong. What you're feeling is wrong." So it's just like that would be too contradictory. So I also know that, uh, and I'm sure you're familiar with this too, Jacob, having had an NDE or near death experience yourself. That I've heard that people who've had NDEs, what they're what they're shown on the other side is what they're meant to see. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what it's like for all of us.
mhm,
So who's to say that a spirit guide will present to me like my past grandma, but to you they present like an extraterrestrial or something like that. So
mhm,
it's what we need to see. They can morph. I've been toying with this idea that Jason has given me, that all of our guides are actually one energy, but how they present to us will morph. So anyway, I mean, just all these ideas that are like,
yeah,
"Huh, that's interesting that I'm being given and still toying with." Um, so so So, that's what I say about
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes we could get caught up with the human stuff and just the lingo and the territory. But like you said, it's very important that there's nuance involved, there's empowerment, and there's intuition, which is very, I guess, dichotomous with religion or stuff like that, which is like this is the way, this is black and white. Spirituality is supposed to really be multicolored and subjective to the
Yeah.
individual, for sure. Have you ever probed into your own dynamic with Jason, like how Jason came into your life? What was some of the magneticism between you and Jason, or just like how that worked on a micro level and on a macro level? Like, how does it work with people's guides? Is there usually, I know you mentioned obviously it would be very hard for almost impossible for that guide to be in this life, but why do certain guides or primary guides come to us? Um, is it
Yeah.
mutual? Is it past life stuff? Like, what would you say on a macro and micro kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in the larger picture, I think it's just a known, whether God or source or however you wanna call it, um, knows what our personality and souls will need, for our own growth. And maybe the guide or the entity that's there to help us through, how we'll mesh well with that and help us get to that growth that we need to get to. Um, and as far as, the 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 guides that we have in our lives, we from what I've been told, we all have that main guide that just kinda stays with us, almost like they're the event planner. And then everybody else has been hired, as needed. So you have somebody who is hired to make sure that the food and the catering is there. So maybe you've got someone there to help you in your life with your diet. And then you've got somebody who's there to help you with your schooling, and then someone to help you with your relationship, someone who's
Mhm,
there when you are dealing with depression. So, we have all these guides that then come and go for when we need them to. Do you have to know who's coming and going? No, you don't have to know. You can just reach out in general, please be with me as I'm going through this or help guide me through this. Don't worry about, the specifics. Which guide am I calling on this time, or, who am I asking for help this time? They'll
mm,
take care of it. The main guide will also help you with that as well. I do find that I'm connecting more with Jason than perhaps I am with like whatever other guide I need
mhm,
to, and I just kind of trust that it will happen. It was interesting because recently I was in a meditative state and I got a very interesting message. So it was interesting when you asked me about Jason, and I think you said something about me. Anyway,
the connection that the 2 of you have.
yeah.
Mhm,
So, um, when okay, let me backtrack a little bit. So when I first met Jason in my dream, years ago, nothing really happened after that for a
mm,
while. It was kinda like, "Okay, that's cool." And then continued to live my life. I didn't, go to him for anything. It wasn't like I think I mentioned this to you before on my show, Jacob, but it was like I did a DNA test. I found out I had this, I don't know, brother, and then we just didn't really build a relationship. Yeah, he's my brother, but, I didn't really build a relationship. And then when I started to meditate back in 2019, he started to come back around again, and then we really started to build a relationship then. So it took probably like 20 plus years for me to create a relationship
mm.
with my spirit guide after learning about him. But in a meditative state not that long ago, this was really interesting, but I got a download from from Jesus, and in that download he said that Jason is also me. So this is like I'm going way over here, and I haven't shared this yet with anybody. I shared it with my husband, that's it. But he said that he came to me as Jason, Maybe this is the same idea of the energy is the same, but it morphs to what we need. But he came to me as Jason because at the time, even though Jesus came to me in a dream, a little before this, um, I connected Jesus to Christianity only, and so
Mhm.
it was hard for me to separate the two. So when I met Jason, that was easy because I'm like, oh, spirituality feels good. Okay, Jason's a spirit guide. This is all part of it. I found my guide. It's all making sense. It's all coming together. But he said that he presented himself to me as Jason. So I still call Jason my guide. Um, but Jesus might be telling me something different. I'm still exploring this.
Mhm.
But just to like share about the possibility and the ideas of things. And it was interesting too because there's this same number of letters in the name Jason that starts with a J. There isn't Hughes, right?
Yeah.
Jasonjesus. So anyway, it's just all these sort of things that I'm working through. But as I said, I'm going through this journey along with my listeners as well and learning new things about my guides and my teams that, whether it resonates for other people or not. Anyway, so
Mhm.
guides can be here, they can come and go. I have actually done a reading for somebody too where the guide shared with me that they shared a past life
Mhm.
with the client I was reading for. They were in a war scenario together at World War One, World War Two, or something like that. So they lived concurrently at that time. And I've also been told that um, they will switch. So the person I was reading for
Mhm.
then becomes a spirit guide, and then the spirit guide lives a life. So
Mhm.
again, nothing's black and white.
Yeah. A lot of gray, which some could be hard to some people, but there has to be. Do you find that from being vulnerable, you've been able to grow in a way from not knowing, and then
Oh,
being
yeah.
able to just act on that, that's been expansive. Mm,
Yes.
you know, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's once we feel like we know it all, then spirit just totally lures us away with something new, and it's like, "Wait, but wait, there's more," and you're never there. And so, it's an evolving process, and that's exciting. There's always new information, new understandings, and that seems to be a big part of your evolution. Tell us a little bit about your book and how that came to be, because I know you mentioned that you did publish a book in addition to the Guided Life podcast and the mediumship work that you're doing. How did that come about?
Yes. So that's a good question. So uh, I don't know, about a year and a half before I actually published, I had a couple different people in two different settings, didn't know each other, ask me if I was writing all my spiritual experiences down because they see me writing a book. And so
Mhm.
by the time the second person had said something to me about it, I knew it was a sign from the other side that I meant to write a book. I was open enough to be in tune with that. And so prior to that, I was like, writing a book, what do I have to say? How can I fill up a book? People going to find it interesting? All those thoughts that sort of come in and have you start to doubt it's our humannessness. And so when I decided that, you know what? Okay, I'm going to write a book. And as soon as I said, okay, I'll do it, the motivation that wasn't there before just came flooding in. I grabbed my laptop and I opened it up and I opened up to Google Docs and I sit there and I'm like, I can't wait to do this, but how do I even start? Like, what am I going to say? And so it was then that I decided, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and start channel writing this and see what comes because I know this isn't just my book. Spirit's here wanting me to write this as well. And so that's what I did. And then that's how it transpired was basically me saying, okay, I'll do it.
Mhm. And what's the
Yeah.
title and name of your book again? Remind us.
Yeah. It's called Guided.
Guided, and
That's
people could
it.
purchase it, uh, th
Amazon.
through Amazon. So, yes, do
Yes.
check out Guided by the Laura West, channeled book. Yes, that awesome. Any, books that you feel that spirit's pushing you as well right now, or you feel like I'm taking a little bit of sabbatic because I know as an author, it's like I don't know what this is like, but I would imagine it's like giving birth or something. For me, writing 2 books was just took everything out of me. People's like, "When's your next book coming out?" I'm like, I don't know, when are you buying your next home? Like, I don't know, it's a lot, you know?
That's so funny. Yeah, it's like when you just had a baby and they're like, "Okay, well, now when are you gonna have your second baby?" Exactly.
Yeah,
You're like,
it's like
"I'm trying to survive this first one."
yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
It's funny because I did start a second one probably a couple years ago, and then I haven't gone back to revisit it, so I'm, like,
mm,
waiting for the inspiration to come back. But I feel like there are more books in me
mhm.
to give. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
you're young, you're healthy, you got a Peloton behind you, you got a long time to live
I
here, you know, so yeah,
do.
that does help as a writer, movement, blood flow, all those things,
Oh,
so,
oh,
yeah.
yes.
What, for you, like, what's been coming to you very strongly from the spirit realm, on a collective basis? Because obviously, again, this is not a political channel, but there is these last several years just, we're, like, at a tipping point right now, and just, like, do you, like, get anything from Jason or spirit as to, where humanity needs to pivot right now because this seems to be a real these last several years have just been like things are just building and building in many ways.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So what comes initially when you ask me that is I see, around me, I'm being shown the earth and I'm being shown
Mhm,
just people holding hands around the earth. I think there's like a drawing or some kids drawing about this.
mhm,
Um, but the importance of sort of rising above that and remembering who we are as people and that kindness and love is what is important. What I'm getting is, there's a lot of low vibes at high levels,
mhm,
and w we a lot of high vibe people are a it's almost like the humanness of us, because we're still human, is being greatly affected by the low vibes at the top, and it's making us sort of forget what it is that we are here to do or meant to do, which is, as Sylvia said, do good, shut up and go home or something like that. So, mm, we're meant to sort of rise above the low vibes of those who seem to be, on the higher levels.
mhm,
So how do we do that? We do that by, um, again, it's as simple as being kind to each other, and trying to rise above the humanness that
mhm,
creates these low vibes, and trying to remember on a spirit level why we are here and who we are. So
mhm,
that's I'm trying to say this as delicately and non-politically as I can, but
mhm,
that's basically it, is just trying to rise above and not not be divided and conquered, if that makes
mhm.
sense.
Yeah. People really need to keep their vibes up and they have to
Yeah,
keep the main thing and focus on their controls, but absolutely. Now, I
yeah.
was an honored guest on the Guided Life podcast. Really recommend it. How has it been like for you? I mean, obviously as an author and now the Guided Life podcast, can you just share a little bit about how that has, kind of changed your everyday experience and what do you enjoy the most about the podcast and doing this work?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I didn't know that I would love podcasting
Mhm,
so much. When I started, gosh, has it been 3 years now? 3 years ago? I wanted to do something, like, continue to put my voice out there. The book had been published, and so I was thinking, like, do I do a blog? Do I do, like, a YouTube channel? Do I do a podcast? What do I do? And I loved the idea of a podcast because I liked the idea of, 1, having conversations with other people. So I'm like, "Gosh, I'm having all these really fun, cool conversations with people, on the topic of spirituality,
mhm,
but I should record these and share these with other people who might be interested, or maybe who don't have, the means to have these sorts of conversations on their own on a personal level, but they want to still be involved and engaged in them. So I like the idea of a podcast because you can hear hear the fluctuations in the voice, you can hear the excitement, you can hear the sadness, you can hear all the vulnerability in somebody's voice and be a part of that conversation. I feel like it's very personal when you got people's voices in your ears, not in a schizophrenic way, but, in a way where you can, like, be in a conversation with other people and feel like you're a part of it, even if you're just listening, and hearing just those different, intonations and fluctuations in the voices. I didn't feel like a blog could allow that. Yeah, you could do exclamation points, but, there's only so much that you can convey, in text, whereas in the podcast, I just love the idea of being able to have these, really organic and vulnerable and, interesting conversations with people, and I've learned so much by having so many guests on, including yourself, Jacob. Having over 200 episodes, it's a lot of
Right.
people to talk to about these sorts of topics and learning so much and having conversations with people that I normally wouldn't, having, connections and opportunities that I normally wouldn't as well. So it's just been an amazing journey, and as long as I continue to feel motivated to do it, I'm gonna keep going, so here I am.
And as long as it's fun, all right? You gotta have fun
Yes,
doing it, and,
yes.
200, wow, that is inspiring. Awesome.
Thanks.
Keep at it.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Now, Laura, if someone's interested in following your work or potentially getting a mediumship reading, or just connecting, like, where's the best place to, to find all things Laura West?
Yeah, so really, it would be my link tree, but to make things easy, like on Instagram, I'm on there, a Guide to Life podcast, Laura West. But I'll say my link tree here, but it's linktr.ee/guided west. And that just
Yeah.
has everything on there.
Yeah, and give her a follow on Instagram, and you could follow her work there, and you could also check Laura out rather, and her podcast, which my channel is also part of on the mindbodyspirit.fm network. So really recommended. Laura, before we go, any other messages that Spirit, is coming at you, or you're like, all right, well, we had a microphone in the beginning, but we're gonna drop the mic right now. No need it. We're good. Um, yeah, I mean anything that you're being called to say in terms of parting words for, viewers. This was a wonderful guided conversation. Really loved every word, but I'm just wondering if there's anything else or other areas that you'd like to address?
Yeah. So whoever this message is actually meant for, because I feel that a lot of your listeners are on this spiritual journey. Um, but just to, let them know that it may seem like nothing's really happening now. Um, but know that there is a lot happening in the background. There's a lot getting set into place. People being in the right place at the right time, conversations happening at the right place at the right time. So a lot is happening, sort of quote unquote, behind the scenes. Um, so even though from our perspective it may seem like all is quiet, there's a lot going on, and this is happening for everybody all the time. So just continue on, because you'll see how it'll all come together. And I feel like when that happens, there will be a lot of you who are going to really understand what it's meant to have a soul team on your side, on the other side, rooting for you and doing all this work of guiding and supporting you. So sit tight because great things will be coming.
Magic is on the way. Yeah.
Yep.
Laura West, thank you so much for your generous time. You're welcome back at any moment. And viewers, please do follow and check out Laura West's work. Check out her book as well as her podcast as well. But thank you for keeping things very high vibratory and angelic. And I encourage all of you to meditate, speak with your guides, tune in, and you could have a similar transformation that really has changed Laura's life, and as a result, so many others have been impacted by her high tide rising many boats. So, thank you, Laura. And it's been real, and we'll connect soon.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been such a blast. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was a wonderful conversation. Thank you all for tuning in. I strongly encourage you to check out Laura's work, give her a follow on Instagram, check out her podcast on mindbodyspirit.fm, where you could also find the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder podcast too. And I'm sure you enjoyed every word as much as I did from Laura. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you here next time in the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder, where we're continuing to ascend and climb each rung higher and higher. And we're now getting closer to our 100th episode on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. Thank you for tuning in to the channel, and let's allow yourselves to tune in to the spirit realm as well as your guides, as Laura strongly emphasized to do. Thank you. We'll talk soon. God bless. Bye now.